be breaking news. There could be breaking news at any minute now. So, it's possible, and then it wasn't, and now it is again possible that Israel will have a change government, and thus our conversation today is backlit a bit differently than it was when we imagined it. We also talked about this, having this conversation before the last war. So we're clearly in a different moment. And I know that we'll definitely get to the practical matters of what is next for the Israeli left. Who is the left? What role can it play? But also with the possibility of Netanyahu's rule finally ending, I'm also eager to hear about how we shift the role that the left plays in the Israeli psyche and in the cultural imagination. And actually today, the Haaretz editorial board really hit on that today when it noted that Netanyahu managed to make the left synonymous with all that endangers Israel's security and threatens its future. And I know that our speakers have thought a lot about these questions as well, and I'm excited to hear from them. So I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for today, Rabbi Lauren Henderson, and who will introduce our speakers. Rabbi Lauren originally hails from Spartanburg, South Carolina, and now serves Congregation Or Chadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. She earned her BA from Rice University in 2009 in religious studies and history, and was ordained at the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York in 2016 with a master's in Midrash. She was part of the Jewish Emergent Network's first rabbinic fellowship and served as an associate rabbi at Mishkan, Chicago until 2020. And parenthetically, I was there for a bat mitzvah and had the pleasure of being at services with her. She's married to Joel Dworkin, an outdoor experiential educator and a brilliant home chef. And they have an adorable dog named Sophie. So I hand it over to Rabbi Lauren.
Thank you, Ruti. Really honored. There we go. Okay. Thank you, Ruti. Really honored to moderate this conversation today with these amazing speakers. Just before we dive in, I wanted to share just a brief reflection on a verse from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible, that I was thinking about last night in preparation for this. There's a set of 3 verses in Shir HaShirim, in Song of Songs, that essentially are repetitions of one another, and they say, I adjure you, O maidens of Jerusalem, Hishbati etchem banot Yerushalayim, al ta'iru ve'im ta'oreru et ahava ad shetechpatz. I adjure you, O maidens of Jerusalem, don't awaken or rouse love until it please. Sort of the biblical version of like, you can't hurry love, you just have to wait. And this verse, interestingly, was used and interpreted in a midrash in the Talmud by the rabbis to say to anyone making aliyah to Israel, slow down. You got to do this on God's timeline, not on your own. So so you can't go together. And of course, was pushed back against by the early Zionists, who said, no, we're ready to take matters into our own hands. But I'm thinking about this verse in the particular context that we're in, because I often feel that don't slow down, wait, don't push. It has been a sentiment that has been lobbed at the left in Israel for a long time. Conditions aren't right for peace. We have to wait until both sides are ready. And because both sides aren't ready, there's nothing we can do. You just have to wait. Don't push. And I find, as someone who finds my own home in Israel deeply in this place of progressive values and building a democracy for all of the people who find themselves in this land, wanting to push back against that sentiment and saying, no, there is so much we can do to create a groundwork for democracy here. And so I hold this verse up for us now because I find that we are in a moment of ad shetechpatz, that the desire and the love to push and create a reality on the ground is in our own hands. and wanting to push back against all the forces that would say otherwise. And so I'm excited to hear from our speakers today who are going to really lay out that reality for us, hopefully, and give us a sense of clarity and a sense of a real path forward in this auspicious, I hope, moment. So I'm going to be asking, I'm going to introduce our two speakers, and then I'll be asking them questions for the next half hour or so. And as I do, you're welcome to put questions at any point into the chat, and then we'll leave a little bit of time in about half an hour for open Q&A. So our two speakers today, first I want to introduce Maisam Jaljuli, who is the co-chair of the board of directors of Sikkuy, a shared Jewish and Arab nonprofit organization that works to advance equality and partnership between the Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel and the country's Jewish citizens. A social, feminist, and political activist, she holds a BA in criminology and sociology and an MA in educational leadership. She has a long record of leading a broad range of public campaigns for workers and women's rights, against the occupation, and to advance shared and equal society. She serves as the chairperson of the women's organization Na'amat in the Southern Triangle region and is the chair of the Hadash political faction in Na'amat. She serves on the boards of the Histadrut Labor Federation, the National Council for Road Safety, Itach Ma'aki, Women's Lawyers for Social Justice, and is on the coordinating committee of Standing Together. Maisam lives with her family in Tira. Also with us today is Noam Vidan. Noam is the executive director of IDEA. Noam founded the Misholim program to train political educators in various academic institutions. She earned her BA and teaching certificate in civics, democracy, and social community education at Oranim Academic College, and her MA in interdisciplinary democratic studies at the Open University. Over the past decade, Noam has worked in political civic education by developing educational content, teaching, facilitating, and training educational teams in formal, informal, and academic education systems. She has also facilitated leadership development in various educational frameworks. So welcome, Maisam and Noam. And I know you two are good friends, and so really would love for this to be really a conversation between the two of you, and I'll just spark questions. So I'd love to start off by just asking you to tell us a little bit about the organizations or movements that you lead and the work that you've been doing over the last couple of years. So Maisam, I see you're unmuted, so I'll have you start first.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here with you today. And yes, we are waiting for a dramatic news in the next maybe hour or so. I think that, yes, we are in a historical moment right now. And yeah, I'm very active in issues of equality, social justice, and, and peace and ending the occupation. I, as you said, the co-chair of Sikkuy. Sikkuy is an NGO. It works for providing quality for Palestinians, Israeli citizens, and it's an NGO which works with the government, and it does a lot of advocacy in order to promote equality, civic equality for Palestinians, Israeli citizens. And I'm also a member of Standing Together, Naqif Ma'an, Omdim B'Yachad, which is a movement which ties people Arab and Jewish towards values of equality and social justice, and also ending the occupation. And I'm very proud of Standing Together, of the action that have been done in the last 3 weeks during the war on Gaza. And it was a very, very empowering moments for us as people who works for shared society. And I'm also active in other organizations. You know, the issue of building a just society and equal society in Israel is one of the most important things that I do in the daily life.
Thank you. Noam, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. As Lauren says in the beginning, this is a huge moment. I mean, like this week is a huge moment after the last month, and especially this hour in this day, maybe tomorrow morning, we can't tell. This is a very big moment. I saw like in the chat that everybody is confusing. I hope that we can give you some of our feelings about this moment. This is a very big moment for us, I guess, like you had a few months ago. A historic one, because Maisam didn't say that, but maybe the next government will be with Arabs inside as the ministers. This is a huge history in Israel, so we're crossing our fingers that everybody is going to be polite and take it forward. So this is tonight. My name is Noam. As you said, I'm an educator in my professional background. And today I'm the CEO of IDEA, which is an NGO that puts infrastructure for long-term work for the liberal democratic camp in Israel. We work on building network of leadership or the public figures from many kinds of systems and many kinds of places, NGOs and the media and the political parties. We work with wide liberal network that includes from what's left from the liberal right in Israel through the center and the left and the Palestinians all together. And we're talking about liberal democracy and the coalition that will build it together. So this is what it is doing in the last 4 years. We're a pretty young organization.
Thank you. So let's just jump right into this moment, this huge moment that we are in. Tell us about, you know, as you mentioned, many of us are feeling very conflicted over here. What are we to make of the news that a potential, you know, unity coalition we might be on the verge of that would oust Netanyahu? Is this categorically a good thing? Is this depends on the outcome? What would this mean for the left in Israel, and what would this mean for your work going forward?
Maisam, you want to start?
Okay, so let's say like that. It's very confusing also for me as Palestinian Israeli citizens, because they know this government, this also new government, is not my piece of cake, because it includes Naftali Bennett and Yamina, which is a really far right. And you know, their ideology is the opposite of my ideology, and I think it's very hard for me also, you know, to think that they will change their ideology. But on the other side, I know that we are, as a left, we are so small. We cannot actually have our own government in Israel. And the most important thing also for me is to get rid of Netanyahu, because Netanyahu was awful, and his governments all over the last 12 years were very awful, especially for us as Palestinians, Israeli citizens. You know, the amount of incitement that we had in these last 12 years was enormous. And you know, it's the feeling that he and his government had a lot of delegitimization for our own existence in this country. You know. And this is what, and there was a huge fight against 20% of the Israeli citizens. And so for me, it's very important to get rid of Netanyahu. Let's say, I don't know what is going to happen in this government. Everything seems to be, you know, not clear. But, and you know, and not all the left in this government. Let's not forget that Hadash, which is a Jewish Arab party, and it's part of the left side of the political map, will not be in this government. And it seems to be that they will also, I'm a member of Hadash, it seems to be that Hadash members and the joint list will vote against this government because of Bennett and Yamina. So it's really a very complicated, but I think it's also an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to create the change that we wanted all the time. It's an opportunity that we must really, really get it with our two hands and start working to change things inside, from the inside, not only from the outside. And it's the time to get together as progressive left and, to see how can we influence this government. No,
I want to add only one thing because I agree with all you said. Yesterday I listened to Bennett's speak, like he spoke on television, like in this hour yesterday, and says to the nation that this is time for a reunion and to reunite and to be a moderate people. And he talked about the lefties, not as an enemy, not as a traitors, and that was the first. And I was so glad. I don't believe him personally, but I feel that the fact he did that says something about this moment. Like we had almost civil war in Israel right now, like in the last month. Like the people in Israel, Arabs and Jews, felt like we are in the end of the relationship in Israel. And I feel like 90% of the population in Israel, Haredis and seculars, Arabs and Jews, don't want to live like that. And I feel like that was a waking month for everybody, and also for Bennett. And it has to be moderated in this moment. And I feel like this is a great point. I don't believe him. I won't ever vote for him. But if we became to a situation that Naftali Bennett is moderating the situation and make everybody calm, we're in a good point for this moment. And I feel like what Netanyahu did with Mansour Abbas, I don't know if you're all aware, he gave us the opportunity to build a partnership that we couldn't do before, or we were too afraid to do before. And now we can take it and start building it. This government is not the end of the way, it's only the beginning of the way, and we have to look at it like that. Netanyahu is our Trump, okay? He's huge damage for the institutions, not only for the, I don't know, my feelings or the situation in some policy. He ruined the country and the state, like the institutional and the public belief in the state. So now we have a big hate between the people, and people are dead because of that. And the war is continuing because of Netanyahu's political agenda, which is himself. So we have to take him aside to begin, not to end. So the government, I don't know how long it will last. I don't know if she will have any success or accomplishments, but I know the fact that she's existing, this is a very big accomplishment, and we have to take it seriously. We have no choice.
So I read a quote by Rachel Azaria, who said, okay, the world is still in COVID, but Israel is already 4 crises beyond COVID. So we're, moving at a much faster pace than the rest of the world. And so thinking back to even just, 2 weeks ago and the moment of the ceasefire, we know now, the war, the 11 days of fighting is over, but the reverberations are continuing on the ground very much, particularly as the Israeli government has been arresting Palestinians en masse. And so tell us a little bit about what are progressives in Israel doing in real time to push back on this infringement on civil rights for Palestinian citizens of Israel? And do you think some of this pushback has been or will be effective?
Okay, so I will try to answer the question. I think, yes, we had a very complicated 3 weeks. It was, for me as a Palestinian citizen of Israel, I think that my whole world is collapsing. It was a very hard moment for me. And, I felt an existential threat on me. I said that my exist is in a threat in this state, because when you saw, hundreds of settlers which are coming from the settlers in the West Bank and, filling the, what we call the shared cities, or the like Lod and Akko and Haifa. So I think it was, a moment that I said to myself, wow. And so if they come to Tira, for example, and trying, moving in the streets, and so it was really threatening moment. But, I think that what was different this time is that we had a lot of solidarity, a lot of support from our Jewish friends. I think that we managed to build patterns, civic patterns in the last few years that really helped us understanding more and more the situation. And if I compare, I would like sometimes to compare what's happened the last 2 weeks to October 2000, the Intifada al-Aqsa, or what we call it in Israel, the October events. Back then, I was, 2000, yes. I was younger. I was a mother for 2 children. And I think that this time we managed these 2 weeks better than 2000, because I think at 2000, I felt alone. All Palestinians, Israeli citizens felt alone. We felt that also the left side is leaving us. Nobody, a lot of people from the left side said, okay, you are demonstrating, you are not accepting what's happening, so we are leaving you, manage yourself. This time it wasn't like that. The feeling was that the whole civil society, the shared civil society, and also some of people from the left Zionist parties knew the truth and they stood for us. This was refreshing this time, and I think it's we should, we should say the truth that we worked very hard to get to this moment. The last decades or decade and a half, we had a lot of work as progressives, Palestinians progressives and Jewish progressive, in order to build patterns for shared society and for equality. So this is the optimistic, light that I see in this whole event. And the danger is that I feel that the patterns of the government are collapsing. The whole institutions of democracy that they held the democracy are collapsing. Look at the police. The police did nothing in the shared society. They let the settlers enter the shared society. They even defended them. They let them go in the street with the defense of the police. And now the police is having a mass arrests for young people. I just heard today that they arrested young children, ages 13, 14. So, and this is really very dangerous. There's a lot of lawyers and a lot of NGOs who are, standing with these people who were arrested. But I think that this is very dangerous. It's a collective punishment for people who really dare to protest, people who dare to say we don't accept, and it sometimes feels that we are returning back to the military regime back in the 16s, in the 1960s, which ended in 6. So yes, we are having a lot of challenges, but I think that this time we're more aware and are willing to do more than we did before. Noam.
Maisam, you didn't tell them about, I can tell them, but this is your area, so I can tell them what you did, because you didn't tell them about the Palestinian NGOs work. That in these times it was the first time that all NGOs, Palestinian NGOs, not shared NGOs, worked together. And the NGOs in the Palestinian society in Israel, inside of Israel, is usually not professional enough, or I'm not sure if this is the right way to look at this, but usually works apart and don't know how to act in the reality together to act. And I think that in this event, it was after COVID, because COVID was the first time that, how you called it, Maisam? Like it wasn't the Vadat Ma'akav just gathered, right?
It was the they call it the emergency room or the emergency committee.
Emergency committee, and all of the NGOs, all of the NGOs in the Palestinian society work together to react to the situation, and it's important point. Usually the Palestinian, especially the Palestinian, but not only, like all the left and liberal side in Israel are very apologetic and very working as a defense, not as something that we can wish for power and go to take what we own. And I think it was a very interesting moment for the Palestinian civic society in Israel. Our work in IDEA, and I think this is not exactly what you asked, but our work in IDEA is long-term job. So always, like in elections and in this kind of events, we're doing yoga and we breathe and we tell ourselves, this is not our job to react. We need to calm the situation and think forward. Like we are gathering all of the people, like all of our partners that work in the field, we collect them and try to think together what's next and how we need to analyze the situation and what can we learn from it to our next steps. And so I personally was afraid as Maisam, I think, sometimes from the same people, like the right-wing militias in the streets was against me, not as much as against Maisam, but I was afraid to walk in the streets as a left activist. And it was the mixed cities, the shared cities was a very frightening place to be in. And I live in Tel Aviv, which is with Yafo, and it wasn't secure times in the streets of Israel. So as a person, I was not effective. I was afraid. And as an NGO, I waited and I took some deep breath and then waited for the wave to move, to pass.
I'm so inspired by what you said, and I just want to take a breath here, just in acknowledgement of everything that you two have been through over these last few weeks and beyond. But I think there's something so powerful that you said that I want to lift up, which is sort of both of you, recognizing that you are part of this wider network of NGOs and that not every piece of the work is yours, and that being able to take a breath and say, okay, we have a particular role to play in envisioning the future, and we can trust that our partners in these other organizations are doing the very necessary defense work to push back against what's happening in the immediate, in the here and now, and that requires a lot of trust. And I think in what you're saying, you're really pushing back against the dominant narrative that has said, coexistence is dead, shared society is dead, it's over. I mean, it sounds like in what you're saying, it's really just beginning. And it has been going for so long, and that trust would not have been possible, without those years and years of that fabric of relationship.
I do think we have to challenge ourselves and ask ourselves some very tough questions about the situation, because if we are working for at least 2 decades about shared life and shared societies, and this explosion is happening, so we must do something not good enough. So we have to ask ourselves what we did wrong, not as the whole theory or our ideologic way is wrong, but we did something wrong. We went somewhere and we weren't sharp enough. And I think I talked, Maisam and I were talking this morning, and we tried to understand together where we went wrong. And we got to 3 points that I think that the shared society, NGO, mostly NGOs, because we're not working only from NGOs kind of system. I think we ignored as a society from the collective rights of the Palestinians. As NGOs, we dealt only with the civic rights as an individual, and I think that was wrong. We can't expect that the national identity of the Palestinian will disappear because we're friends and because we're working on civil rights. So I think this one point is very huge. I think the government wanted that, and I think we took it. As a left wing, as a liberals, I think we went too far with the individual kind of way of thinking. Second of all, I think we dealt like the coexisting society. We dealt with meet each other and to speak to each other, but we ignore the conflicts. And you can, I don't know if you saw, but in Facebook, many people put on the frame, like for the profile picture, Arabs and Jews refuse to be enemies. And I told Maisam this morning, I feel this is so minimum. Like me and Maisam, we're not refusing to be enemies. She's my friend and my partner. I'm not refusing to be her enemy. I'm not her enemy from the beginning, and nothing will make her my enemy. She's my partner. And I won't put a frame like I won't be Maisam's enemy. That's a natural understanding for me. And I think that we didn't walk this through, because me and Maisam were friends, not only because we can speak to each other, because we have a common ground and a common vision. And we have conflicts between us. We don't agree, we won't agree on everything, but we have a common vision for Israel. I think this is the point.
So yes, I think that if we are talking about the left and the progressive left, especially the progressive left, I think that we, in the last decades, we didn't gain for power. The goal of having power or returning to power wasn't one of our missions, let's say, especially, in the party system, in the political system. We are in the civic society, we try to do a lot of work, but it's very important work because it's, from the bottom up, but it wasn't enough because we need to build this power again. And actually, nowadays, we are so weak politically. We are very, very weak politically. We cannot, also, we are not managing to change the political sphere in Israel. And what another mistake that especially the left Zionist parties have done is not, seeing that they have also an Arab left, Palestinian left in the other side. So the political sphere was very, you have the right wing, you have the Zionist left or center, and you have the Arab parties, and the Jewish left looked at the Arab parties are the same. They are not the same. There are a lot of ideologies. We have Ram, which is really right. It's a right-wing party. We have Hadash and others who are in the left side of the political map. And actually, I think that this period is teaching us that we need to create another sphere of politics in the parties. The parties should learn from what we have done in the civic society, and we've done a lot. But in some way, this role model wasn't transferred to the parties, and this is a huge work that we should do right now. We should teach them to do this. You know, for me, it's a pity. Unfortunately, I'm feeling that we had lost something. It was Netanyahu who really, in the last few months, legitimized some of the Arab parties, Ra'am, for example. You know, I should have expected this from the left or the center in Israel. And, you know, these things that sometimes, you know, leave you with a feeling that we didn't do the work.
Right.
So before we turn it over to everyone else for questions, I want to take us into that long term. Where do you see the work now in building political power and translating the civic work into a broader political, what does the long-term work look like now in this landscape?
I'll take what Maisam just said, and I'll just continue from that. And I'll say another thing. Tonight is very dramatic, especially in this question. If we're going to be in the government, I mean Meretz and Labor's, like both parties are extremely connected to our job and our work in the civic society. If we're going into the government, this is one path, and if we're not, this is the second path. If we are going in, we have to educate ourselves to work within the government, because after 20 years of opposition, we're now inside of, like, our activism is oppositional, and we don't know how to go forward with what positive things we want to do from the offices and the ministries. And this is something that it is education. Like, this is a different way of work and patterns, and we have to work differently. I think that the liberal camp in Israel is not working in long-term vision. We work on reactive, all the time, short-term reaction to events, and we have to plan 10 years ahead and to work to get inside the state, inside the government, inside the Knesset, inside the power. And I feel that we don't know not only how to get there, I feel that all of us, and this is our common understanding. So together we are learning again to gain power and go back to the power, but I think we need to plan it and to think differently from what we are. And I think Sikkuy, like the organization that Maisam is the chair of, the co-chair, is one of the only one organization, I think. Maybe we have maybe 4 that really know how to make policy work, or how to work with the government towards liberal policy. So we need Maisam to teach all of us how to do that.
We need to know from the workers of Sikkuy to teach us, the employees of Sikkuy, who are doing a great work, really.
Yeah.
I agree with Noam. I think that we should learn to really to change our patterns in order to gain power. We need a civil society to work more and more with the parties, and also the parties should understand they need us. They need to work with us. You know, I think that the papers that we write, also the advocacy papers that we write, should be, you know, adapted by these parties, and they should work very, very hard in order to gain quality in this society. And if this government, you know, let's see, this government is, as I said before, it's an opportunity. It's our opportunity to starting creating the change. And I think that more and more of us, people who are really very engaged and work in the civil society, should also work for the government. It's time to understand that it's not enough to be very active and very successful in the civil society. We need these people also to enter to offices in the government and to change from the inside. And yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy work to do,
No.
but this is something of our main goals for the next few years.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm going to hand it over now to my colleague, Rabbi Lev Marowitz Nelson, who's going to be fielding questions from the chat.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Happy to be here with you all. I'm Rabbi Lev Marowitz Nelson. I'm Director of Rabbinic Training at Trua, the Rabbinic Hall for Human Rights. Always a pleasure to co-host a webinar with our colleagues at J Street. So many great questions have come in, so we're definitely not going to be able to get to all of them. I want to start with something small, Noam, you set up at the top of your introduction. You said something working with the remains of the liberal right. And the question came in, what do you mean by the liberal right in Israel?
I don't know if you're aware of the few that it is leftovers, okay? Because the Likud in the beginning was actually a liberal national party. And in the last 10 years, it became populist. So some liberal right leadership escaped from her. And now maybe we'll call her them. Like maybe there's 10 people in the public figures that we can point and say this is liberal right, like Ruby Rivlin, the current president, Dan Meridor, who was the justice minister in '92. So we have some liberals that now these days escape from the Likud and now park on, I don't know, Kahol Lavan, Blue and Right, or maybe in Yesh Atid, or maybe in, I don't know, Lieberman's Israel Beitenu. They have no political home. So they're like going around the center-right parties. So this is what I mean. I'm not sure they are calling themselves liberal right. I think they call themselves like sane rights, okay, the saints.
Great. I want to pick up on the last piece of the conversation about political power. Several questions came in wondering what that will look like in terms of the civil society left moving into the political left. If there's a leader you see who can lead that revival, or if alternatively that's the wrong way to approach the question, if we're not looking for a particular leader, but if it's something a little bit more groundswelly.
Maisam, you want to answer that?
It will be a progress. If you ask me if I see a leader who can lead this camp right now, no, I don't see a leader, but it's something that we should build together. And I think that in potential, we have a lot of leaders who can lead this, this camp and who can lead us towards the change. I think that the first thing that we should do is be more united, to understand that we are in a historic moment, and to be more united and not to fight over, very unimportant things that we are very good at fighting actually. So yes, there are some patterns that we should do, and we should learn how to compromise. I think sometimes I'm in Hadash, which is considered to be a very far left, progressive left, and sometimes I think that also in Hadash we need to have some compromise, not compromise in ideology. In order to build a new politics, you need sometimes to be wise and not just. And this is the moment to be wise. And this is my answer.
I agree with Maisam. I think you asked how it will look like, and I think we'll have a coalition that know how to work together and work towards policy inside the country and the state or the government. And yes, we need to compromise and find a way to understand that we have more common than separate. I think that we need to expand the way we look on politics. Like, it's not only the NGOs and the police and the parties, it's also the media, which is a very strong actor in Israel, like Netanyahu's cases, and it's all about the news and the media. So we have to understand that this is a big event in Israel. So the media and the business sector and the culture, popular culture, we have so many potential partners that have to work together towards the same, we have the same vision for Israel. So the power will look like standing together and use all of our tools to win back Israel. And it was never liberal democracy. Usually people say, ask me, so you are missing the old times that everything was good. No, it was never liberal democracy, maybe for 2 months before the occupation and after the military regime. So we had 2 months for potential liberal state, but we have to look forward and do it together. We have no choice.
I think we have another thing that I should add is, also seeking for a new populations. As you know, sometimes we are working automatically with, the people that we know, the people who are, similar to us. And I think that we have the potential to reach to another population. And if I talk especially, I think that the Haredi sector is part of the population that we should start talking with, and the Ethiopians also in Israel, because they are also facing a lot of discriminations, a lot of racist attitudes toward them. And these are a population that maybe in issues of policy and right and wing, they are considered to be more right. But I think in issues of justice and civil equality, we should have coalition with this population and trying to build patterns with them of cooperation and shared activities.
Great. Two different questions came in very similar to each other about the education system in Israel, how you can build a shared society when the education system is segregated. I'm wondering if you can speak to that, what the future should look like there.
I want to start from the fact that the educational system in Israel, the fact that she is public, this is the best thing about it. But other than that, the civic education, the education towards democracy is so bad. I will agree to the separated streams. We call it streams, like the Arab stream, the Mamlachti, like the secular. I would agree for it if it was like civil or common ground for civic education or for civic equality. But the situation is so far from it. So the segregation is only additional problem for the deeper one. I think if the educational system in Israel, and maybe this is the night to say, I'm an activist, or I'm here because of Gideon Sa'ar. Gideon Sa'ar was the educational minister in 2012, and he canceled the education towards democracy. Like the democratic studies in the educational system was shrinked, extremely shrinked in his time in the educational ministry. And the situation is very, very bad. And it's the opposite from your situation. Like in Israel, is like the young people in Israel are racist and more right-winged and more like the old people in Israel are the progressive, or what left from the progressive wing in Israel. So we have a deep problem in the educational system, and we can see the results now in that.
This is one of the issues that we should work in. So I would like that the Labour Party or Meretz demand the education ministry in this government. Yeah. Unfortunately, they didn't, because I think the most important thing to do is education. And the segregation in the education system is, for me, is very despairing. And it's not only the segregation, it's also the differences between the systems, and the lack of quality between these systems. The segregation leads to a very good educational system in the secular Jewish sector, or in the Zionist religious system, and a very educational system in the Arab society, the Palestinian Arab society, in the Haredi society. And I all the time say, I agree, sometimes people want to, their children to be educated due to their values and their ideologies. I'm not against it, but the opportunity should be also to send your children to a shared school or bilingual school. And this is not the case in Israel. The Ministry of Education actually oppose and refuse to build or to create a new system of education, a shared society system of education. And this is something that we should fight for. We need these systems because a lot of people, Jewish and Palestinians, want their children to be educated in such schools. And I think that such schools really can create another view because, you know, the situation now in Israel that my children reach the age of 18 and then never meet any Jew in their ages, especially, you know, young Jews in ages. And the first meeting that they had with the Jewish youngest, it was in the university when they started studying in the university. So this is, you know, this is a reality that nobody can accept. And it seems to be that this is the work that we should really do right now. And I want to add in the issues of education, and I think that segregation with, as Noam said, with the right wing being so much time in power, really lead to a very racist system. And people, especially students from the Jewish side, are becoming very racist. And I hear a lot from Jewish teachers in the public system that they are afraid. They're afraid to take about their left views with the students because they will be the enemy in the schools. So we are really having a very hard time in the education.
We probably have time for just one more question. So hard to choose. Let's go here. So one question came in, sort of a comment question about how long change is taking in the United States, and change is still taking forever here. And looking ahead on a time horizon of say 40 years, what do you see for Israel? Does the arc continue to bend toward justice, or is it all a lost cause?
I'm pretty optimistic. First of all, I think we have to. Second of all, I think I work with the best people in Israel. So in the left, in the liberal camp for sure, but I think maybe in Israel, I see the effort, and I know that there are very good people that work on Israel like 40 years from now. So I'm optimistic. But I have one more reason to be optimistic. I think another like dot, we're always like 5 or 10 years after you guys. So if the situation in your place is going better, so I hope that it will influence us. I feel that the last events in Israel, like the last month, was a great reminder that most of the Israelis don't want the fascists to win. We all want to live quietly and security together. We want to live like in a liberal democracy, in peace and quiet. And we don't want that to be the way of living. And I think that most of the Israeli population is not racist and are not haters. I feel that the government and our leadership is very, very bad for us. And I feel that we have to, like they did, they delegitimized Arabs and liberal opinions, but most of the population in Israel are still liberal. I feel, maybe I'm just imagining, but I think that we have now the opportunity to do this right. So there's a gap between the beliefs and the idea, like in the vision. You know what I'm saying? I'm clear. I guess I'm not. I'm sorry.
No, I think that's clear enough.
No, I agree with Noam actually, and I say that sometimes, and because of that we need to get more. And in 40 years, I can see really in my dreams, I can see the occupation is ended. I can see establishing of a Palestinian state, and I can see more equality. And let's not, lie to ourselves. I think that also creating equality inside in Israel is very well connected to ending the occupation. And this is that should be clear. We are not dividing our struggles. The struggle for equality in Israel is the struggle for ending the occupation. It's the same struggle for me. And I see it changing, but we need first to change, our leaders. We need to be in power, because I think the population, Ha'am, I think that really it changes its mind. The people change their minds due to their politicians or to their leaders. And if we see, what happens in the peace processes all over our history, the peace with Egypt and the peace with Jordan and the also progress. So we saw that people really were supported of this peace process, because the leaders had, this vision that we are creating a better society. So I think in order to change the views of the people, we need to change, first of all, the leaders of this country.
Thanks so much to both of you. I want to turn it back over to Ruti Kadish at J Street to wrap us up.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lev, and thank you, Trua, for being co-sponsoring this meeting and being with us in the work. And also I want to thank all of you for joining us. I want to thank Rabbi Lauren and Noam and Maisam. And I have to say, the last few minutes, so I have a smile smeared on my face. And really, just it's so great to be in this conversation with so much hope. And I take from a couple of things. One, from the relationship, the work and personal relationship between Maisam and Noam. And I know from working at New Israel Fund that they are unique, because they're unique human beings, but they're not unique in their friendship. There's a lot of great relationships. And I think Maisam underscored all the work that's been done to build shared society, and we can't let them take it away from us and from all of us. And the other piece here is that we know this from the experience we had in November, is that we cannot overestimate how or understate or overstate how important this moment is. If we can move away from Netanyahu rule and move away from this destructive individual, similarly to the destructive one we had here. And even, it's not the government we necessarily want, as both Maisam and Noam have underscored, but it is we cannot underestimate how important this change is. And I am really hopeful of what we can do here, what we can do there, what we all can do to support our friends in Israel and Palestine to make this change. So thank you again for being with us. I want to just point you to one event we're having on Thursday, on tomorrow, for those of us, this might be, you can find it on the J Street website, processing how the Jewish community talks to each other about Israel, which I know over the last few weeks has been even more difficult than usual. So take a look at that. Thank you again. Be well and enjoy life as it's opening up with ease of COVID restrictions, vaccinations. Thank you all.
Be well. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.